Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Alan Rickman saying yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
And this week, we celebrate Christmas in July with Die Hard.
Oh, literally.
Before we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the 80s, remember you can help us on Mortified, the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for a monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla.
Aaron.
Why did we watch Die Hard?
I don't actually know. How did this end up on our list?
So we have a big master list for the podcast, and, occasionally I'll just, throw stuff on there. And I was like, I've never seen Die Hard. I don't think Layla's ever seen Die Hard. We might as well just do it, because sometimes it's just like we need something to mix it up. We do a lot of media from the last 20 years, but seeing something from 1988 really did kind of put an interesting perspective on this podcast, because we very rarely do stuff that is older than the 2000s. I feel. So yeah, this was a completely different perspective for me. I don't know what the oldest thing we've watched for this podcast is, but this is probably up there. And I think it was a great experience, honestly.
When was The Secret of NIMH released? Because I feel like that's the competitor.
I want to say 81. Secret of NIMH. 82.
Yeah, I think Secret of NIMH is probably the oldest thing that we've watched. This is up there, though.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, up top, how'd you feel about Die Hard?
I really fucking like Die Hard.
It's a classic for a reason.
It's a good... I want to know... Okay, real talk, though. So the whole time we were watching Die Hard, or I was watching Die Hard, I could not get over the fact that I think if it was released today, it would pass muster.
So here's the thing, I think so too, but Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson released a movie called Skyscraper in 2018, which is a very similar premise, and it underperformed. But I honestly think it's probably, I've never seen Skyscraper. My assumption is that it's just not as good as Die Hard, because I think it's cribbing the same kind of thrills and stunts and premise, but I just think that this film does a lot of action sequence stuff in a really exciting way that I don't think Dwayne's pride would allow him to do.
I mean, I have great news for you about the function of this podcast. We could just watch Skyscraper.
We could. I don't know. We'll see. I think Dwayne Johnson is best when he is played alongside other people that are talented. When he's the leading man, I think he leaves something to be desired. But,
and this is very Bruce Willis is acting out against himself for a good portion of this movie, right? He'll be by himself and then do an action sequence. There's not a ton for him to do. There's the walkie-talkie stuff, but he's not face to face with another actor for a good chunk of it. And the other thing is we talk a lot about diversity in casting and stuff, and there were black actors in lead roles. Holly has a personality. I was I think this would do completely fine in 2020. There's a couple of things you could nudge to be less dated, but otherwise it's
sure.
pretty solid. And it just made me mad. It made me Google when Reagan's presidency took place, because truly that was just a cursed point in American history. And wouldn't you know, Reagan's presidency ended a year after Die Hard came out, and then something bad happened, and you in my notes wrote Newt Gingrich.
Listen, I think Reagan had poisoned the well, but I think Gingrich definitely. I don't know. I saw a Tumblr post about Focus on the Family, so maybe that's why I'm thinking about it. But I feel like the evangelical, Viper really started getting its steam going in the 80s, and by the 90s had really sunk its fangs into American life. So
some mix of that evangelical turn and the AIDS crisis and Reaganomics really fucked the direction of this country in a way that we have yet to recover from.
Yes, but just like every other media property from our current era, let's take a look back at the 80s and talk about the things that were great back then, including Die Hard.
Make action flicks great again.
Yes. So, what happens in Die Hard, Leyla? Well, we start with John McClane. This is the first time I've ever seen Bruce Willis with hair.
I before this movie could not have picked Bruce Willis out from a lineup.
Really? You've never seen a Bruce Willis film?
I am just not familiar with his oeuvre.
Yeah, I feel like he was in, let me see. He was in Armageddon, right? Bruce
I've never seen Armageddon.
Willis. Me neither, but like I got some Armageddon toys when I was a kid for some reason.
Yeah, that tracks.
Which I played with a lot because there was like a big like thing like with a big drill arm, which was sick. Man, they made toys real good in the early 2000s. Yeah, like his filmography. I'm just trying to figure out because like I feel like I saw him in a lot of like weird action flicks.
Well, apparently before Die Hard, he was like a TV actor that was just like a male romantic lead. And then that's why.
Really?
And then Die Hard was like his first big action thing. And he crushed it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. He was in an Oceans movie as himself, which is very funny.
Career fucking goal.
Yeah. He was in Over the Hedge, I guess.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess he's Looper probably is one of the bigger ones that our audience has probably seen. Lego Movie 2.
I have seen Lego Movie 1, which is fucking delightful.
Yeah. That's weird. I feel like Bruce Willis is such a big action star, but I actually haven't seen very many of his films. Well, anyway, I think he's pretty cool. Unfortunately, he recently came out and said that he has dementia. He's been living with dementia for a while, so I feel bad about that turn his health has taken, but he seems like he was like a pretty big staple of like that 80s to or like late 80s to like mid 2000s action. So shout outs to Bruce. Anyway, he's playing John McClane here. He's going to a party in LA. He's a New York City cop, but he's got some trouble with the missus. She's gone out to work for the Nakatomi Corporation here in Los Angeles. Things are different here in California. This movie has such a weird in our notes, it seems like we have different opinions on this movie's politics, and we'll talk about that. But like, I truly think this is like a very conservative film.
It's something. I do find it very funny that it has that like LA New York rivalry, because there's a moment where John like walks into the party and some drunk guy like pats him on the shoulder and like gives him a kiss on the cheek. And John McClane, because you have to be homophobic, obviously, like
right,
staple of
right.
the 80s.
This is the 80s. You're required to be.
Yeah, absolutely. John McClane just looks at the guy, kind of laughs and goes, "Ha! California!" As if it's the weirdest shit. As if like a large portion of the global population doesn't greet each other with a kiss. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very funny, but whatever. Anyway, it's Christmas Eve, and his wife just became the director of operations or something here at the Nakatomi Corporation.
Girl boss.
And it's he's not. It's not clear. I mean, at the beginning, it's very interesting. He keeps looking at other women, which like suggests that he sucks.
To us, I feel like that was expected behavior in the 80s.
Interesting.
The bar is low.
Sure. I mean, like, yeah, maybe that's true, but like, at least here it suggests like, oh, maybe he cheated on her. Like, maybe that's what their marital problems were stemming from. And like, one thing I like about this movie is that the first 17 minutes, there is no hint at any point that Alan Rickman's going to come through the door with a gun. It's just like, yeah, I'm a dude who has some problems with his wife. Anyway, he's like flying. He's on this plane. He gets off the plane. A guy talks to him about how you need to make your toes into a fist to get rid of like plane fear or something. I don't know. Does that pay off? I feel like it might pay off during the walking across glass.
Not the glass thing. It pays off when he's like, quote unquote, washing himself up, like during the party, and he's sitting there like waiting for Holly to get back to the room after she got called out to talk to Joe.
Okay.
And he's sitting there and he's just like, well, what do you know?
Okay, that's a wild thing. Oh, that's why he takes his shoes and socks off.
Yes.
Okay, that's how we get it. We get.
That's how we get.
Listeners. There's a lot of feet in this movie.
Bruce Willis's fucking wiki feet must be just populated from this movie alone.
It's disastrous. But yeah, basically, She's moved out here with their kids, by the way. They live in Los Angeles too, for the last 6 months. So he's got a big old stuffed bear that he took as his carry-on. He's, he meets a limo driver named Argyle, who is like a young man who has also never driven a limo before, which is very funny.
Who spends the movie partying with that bear.
It's awesome. Argyle's my favorite character in this movie.
Agreed, 100,000%.
Maybe Alan Rickman, who kicks ass. But, yeah, he's just like, so Argyle, what do I do? I've never done this before. And Argyle's like, I've never driven a limo before. I guess we'll figure it out. And like they go to this headquarters, and he's just like, talking to him, and he's just like, so seems like your marriage sucks, huh, man? And he's like, you're very perceptive, Argyle. And Argyle immediately picks on the fact that McClane assumed that his wife, Holly Gennaro, would burn out and come back to New York. But like she hasn't, which is why he's coming here. And Argyle just straight up says that. He's like, you're very quick, Argyle. Thanks for pointing that out.
I also think it's just such a good character moment that Bruce Willis does not sit in the back of the limo as you are supposed to. He puts the bear in the back of the limo and goes and sits in front with Argyle.
That's really funny. That's such a good point. But yeah, 100%. And like maybe that's a filmmaking thing to get them both in the same shot. But
there's
also
so many ways to frame it to get them both in the same shot, but like have that power distance between them. But there is like he goes and sits up front. That's an intentional.
Because I think that's a good way to signal to the audience like this guy is the common man, right? I think a lot of this movie is about like the power of the average Joe. As long as they have a gun. But like,
as long as they have a machine gun, ho, ho, ho.
Oh, God, we'll talk about that. But yeah, he gets dropped off at this big, 40-story building. I don't actually know what the Nakatomi Corporation does. I think they sell like VCRs and shit. It's very much like Sony is kind of what I'm thinking of. Like, right. How Sony, like you and I think of Sony as video games because of the fact that we play video games. But like, Sony used to really be all about like VCRs and like electronics.
I was gonna say this is gonna age me. My primary association with Sony has lasted 20 years, and it's Walkmans.
Right, exactly. That's 100% right. Just because I personally my first introduction to Sony was like Crash Bandicoot, but like also like I had a Sony VCR growing up.
Same.
Like so like that's probably what the Nakatomi Corporation does. They have this wild line that's just like we couldn't beat you at Pearl Harbor, so we started beating you with like VCRs. And it's just like, oh wow, this really was made in the 80s, huh?
That bludgeoned me to the temple.
Which like I want like listen, do I think that is a racist thing to say? Like kind of, yeah. But like I do very much think that was like the common prevailing feeling at the time in America, which is like this was this is where the cyberpunk whole genre comes out of, like the rise of Japan as an economic power, right? Which like is reflected in this like fear of the these Japanese corporations being very successful.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, like, they're even, I was just stunned by, like, how time passes, I guess. Because, like, this film is taking place in 1988. At one point, they reference the fact that the guy who runs this place, what's his name? Joe Takagi, right? Mm-hmm. They talk about the fact that he was interned at Manzanar. And I was just like, and that's just, like, a thing that goes without mention. But I was like, oh, my God, yeah. This would have been a thing. Like, there would have been, like, people who, famously, George Takei, right, and also interned at Manzanar, famous actor. So like, obviously there's still people who were living through internment that are still around, but like it would have been really fresh back then. The
Orientalism is the casual Orientalism is really alive and well. Right.
Listen, there's a lot of casual bad shit in here, but like. That is unfortunately a product of the times. Anyway, what happens with Holly? Can you walk us through, when he goes up to the party and his interactions with Holly?
So he sees Holly. I actually really like the tension between Bruce Willis and Holly. they see each other. They like clearly are still like harboring, like they're married, right? They have feelings for each other. Clearly, like something's going on there. And so Holly's like, "Hey, do you want to come like wash up? I have this like private office." And she goes and takes him up there. And this is I love the contrivances that this movie goes through to get Bruce Willis increasingly more naked. Mm-hmm. So here we have him lose his upper layers. He is now in a tank top, as you mentioned. He also takes his socks and shoes off to do the feet fist thing. And he's like washing up and getting ready to like rejoin the party. And him and Holly have this argument that it's clear they've had like 100 times before about the quote unquote the shape of their marriage, right? Like the things that she knows he expects her to do and the things that he expects her to do. But the really neat thing about the characterization of John McClane is at the moment Holly gets pissed at him and then her boss calls her out to go like meet with him for a second, which is what separates them and allows John McClane to run around Nakatomi Plaza like hidden for a while, is that the moment Holly leaves, he's like, "Real mature, John. Good fucking job. You did it, King." Which is an admission of, like, emotional immaturity that you really don't see in a lot of action heroes.
Ever. Right? Like, Alan Rickman's character here, like, you know, at some point talks about how he's like, "Oh, you just, you know, grew up on too many John Wayne and Arnold Schwarzenegger movies." He's like kind of prodding him. But like, I truly think that, you know, this character, John McClane, is like much more emotionally like available to the audience, at least, because he's just like, "Oh my God, I'm such a fuck up. I started this fight with my wife again. I'm a complete idiot." Like and also like he's afraid of being on the plane, right? You know, he is constantly getting fucked up through this movie, and like he doesn't look cool most of the time. He looks terrible. By the end of this movie, he is like, you know, bleeding from all places and looks like shit. But like, I just love that they are willing to like make McClane not a huge Rambo badass.
I could not stop thinking about his tank top because, you know, there's a clause in Vin Diesel's contract that like he's not, or you know, he's not supposed to like get dirty. I don't know if it's contractual.
Sure.
But like that white tank top stays fucking pristine. I think half of Fast and Furious's budget is just tank tops.
Yeah.
Just to put them in a new one for every cut. Bruce Willis's white tank top is brown by the end.
Yes. It's so gross.
It's
and like that's
disgusting.
I love that, right? Like that's what this movie is just like, yeah, this dude's having the worst day of his life and you can see it in every detail.
And he admits to it too, like several times. He's like, damn it, every time. So as this is happening, John continues to like get himself ready, and then out of dead ass nowhere, who shows up but handsome 80s Alan Rickman dressed to the nines with a bunch of German thieves and takes the whole 30th floor hostage.
Alan Rickman, probably a lot of people of our generation know him from Harry Potter, right? Playing Severus Snape famously. But like this dude, like in the 80s, he was handsome as fuck.
Yeah, they put him in one ratty wig for Harry Potter, and like now that's what people think of when they think of Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman's kind of hot. Like 80s Alan Rickman was hot. I actually found Alan Rickman in what's that fucking corny ass Christmas movie that everybody loves to hate? The one with 500 actors in it.
The boombox thing. It's not Say Anything.
No.
It's
Love Actually.
Love Actually, of course.
I'm kind of handsome in Love Actually. Let me make sure. Maybe with Google. Yeah, he's got that like ratty professor vibe with a wet spirit. I didn't know that. Famously.
Beautiful. He looks great, and I was just like, holy shit, I cannot believe Alan Rickman looks like this.
I also love that they had him do a German accent so that he didn't have to try for the American.
He does an American accent he does a Californian accent at one point in this movie, and it's so fucking funny.
It's hysterical. He does a great job. So the thieves show up and they want something inside of the vault. They specifically bonds, I think, in the vault at Nakatomi Plaza. $6 or $7 million worth.
It's like 640 million, which like one, very specific number. Two, not that much money. At least for today, I was like, man, inflation really is fucking shellacked this country, huh?
Yeah.
Because that, like, you'd be talking about billions of dollars today. Like for it to make a dent, it'd be like, oh, this is $50 billion, right?
You'd be doing like Dr. Evil numbers.
Right. Like this is exactly like this is truly like $1 million. Like that's not that much money actually. No. So like yeah, very very funny.
Yeah. So this is where we get this is where we start getting into like the loose cannon cop versus like burned cop versus the cops that are like trying to follow protocol and fuck everything up trichotomy that happens in this flick. Right. So John now in a tank top and barefoot, he kills one of the thieves. And then he gets his machine gun and on his sweater writes, "Now I have a machine gun." Ho.
And sends the body to the 30th floor, notably.
Yeah, to specifically attract the attention of the rest of the thieves and take a tally of them and write down their names on his arm in Sharpie.
It's really good. Like, it is such a weird thing to do, but it's just kind of like, oh yeah, you know, you probably wouldn't be able to just like memorize all the names of the people. Like, this is an interesting way to get information on the bad guys and also like write it down to be like, okay, I guess this is their name, because like this is a thing that like, for instance, I'm just thinking about Fast and Furious because we watched it recently. Like, there's a million fucking names in Fast and Furious, and you kind of have to just assume that everybody knows each other's names and their importance in the world. But like, there's no way everybody knows everybody's names in the Fast and Furious. And like, it's just kind of nice to get this admission that like John McClane is a very, you know, normal guy. He's just like an average dude, even though he's doing Rambo shit. Like he is just kind of like, I need to know their names, so here we go. And it's great.
Yeah, so he, you know, this is where Hans, which is Alan Rickman, starts to, you know, he keeps us cool for like most of the movie, right? Right. And so while this is all happening, John McClane like lowers himself into the elevator shaft and starts like climbing to escape and goes through the air vents. He has an RC radio on him now, and so he contacts the police, and the police is like, "Bitch, this is an emergency line. If you really have an emergency, call 911. And he's like, "I don't think you understand. This building is getting shot up." And so they send a cop over there. The cop goes, and obviously the person posing this as a security guard is not a security guard. Cop comes over, doesn't see anything, and goes, "There's nothing here. I don't understand what anybody's fucking talking about." Until a body of a thief falls onto his windshield. At which point he's like, "Oh shit, oh god. There's a body on my car, and also I'm getting shot at. Let's reverse the fuck out of here."
Right. This is, of course, Reginald Val Johnson, who you probably, I mean, actually, fucking, I never watched Family Matters, so I assume none of y'all would know, but he played a cop on Family Matters. But like, you know, that's kind of his probably most famous role for anybody listening, maybe.
Right. I did poke around his IMDb, and he appears in a lot of stuff as himself, which is funny that like this is his most iconic role still.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when Al summons the rest of the backup, and so now we get the like, not the chief of police, but he's like the
I think it's the chief of the LAPD.
Is it?
I assume
he's a deputy
he's
chief
at least
or something.
Okay, sure.
He's like the top dog. There's someone above him. But he shows up, and he's does not listen to Al for one fucking second, even though Al is like, "Hey man, I got a guy on the inside giving me all these details." And the guy's like, "He could be one of the terrorists. He could be all these things." So he does not trust John. Al trusts John. It's a very interesting little tension out there.
Right.
And then while all that's happening, there's a fucking reporter at the TV station that's like, "I gotta cover this," and forces his way into covering this mess. So now we have this just cacophony of noise outside of Nakatomi Plaza to balance the like delicate tension being built inside of Nakatomi Plaza.
It's really good. One bit I kind of want to focus in on is like when this police chief shows up, like this is really where I was like, oh, I feel like this is a very maybe not anti-cop, but anti-government film.
Anti-bureaucracy at the very least. Right,
bureaucracy, 100%. Yeah. And by proxy, government, at least in my experience. But like, you know, like it is not, you know, the bad guys who are not like actual terrorists are the FBI. They are the people who are working the like emergency radio. They are, you know, the people above Al, right? Like the chief of police, right? because they're all like, oh no, you don't understand. There's all these procedures. There's this rule book we have to follow. Like you're not following the rules. You're not understanding how the system works. And like the two, quote unquote best people, or not even best, right? But like people who do the most are, good in this movie are, obviously John McClane, but also Al. And also, for if we're being, really casting a wide net, Argyle, or not Argyle. Is his name Argyle?
Argyle, I would say counts. He does ram
Argyle, yeah, because like it's
the escape car.
It is really just like independent men taking action, by themselves, doing the heroic thing, right? Which like one, you shouldn't like watch action movies and be like, wow, they're really hyping up individualism in this action movie. Man, I like, come on, that's what these things are about. Like they're about fucking superheroes, right? But at the same time, like I think especially the ways in which it criticizes bureaucracy, it make this a very 80s movie to me.
Yeah, but that being said, like I think Die Hard's an interesting case study because like it isn't as about individualism as some of like the more modern things, because sure. John McClane would not be able to succeed without the help of Al and Argyle and his wife at the end.
Right. That's a good point, right? And that's what makes John McClane much more interesting to me as a character, right?
I was going to say, John McClane's not that interesting.
No, he's something. But like when he's just like having these radio conversations with Al, like they're talking about like the ingredients in Twinkies, and like he's asking about like how many how many kids Al has, and like talking about Al's like history, why he's not on the front lines anymore, and like he's being like really emotionally available and like vulnerable about his situation, which is like kind of nice. It's just kind of like, yeah, this is just a dude who is trying to do the right thing but is also very scared.
Which is funny because for a majority of the movie nobody knows John's name until what's his face sells him out.
Ellis. Yeah, which we'll get to. But basically, there's just like once the police chief shows up, the whole LAPD rolls up, and like this is LAPD in the 80s, right? When was Rodney King? Hold on, let me just. Rodney King, victim of police brutality. Yes, that is kind of the main thing. 1991, right? So this movie comes out 3 years before the Rodney King event. So like even then, like the LAPD is kind of being portrayed as a bunch of like people with too much money and are not doing great bureaucratically. But like they roll up with their big SWAT team rolls up. They have like a fucking armored personnel carrier at one point, and like Bruce is like, or John is like, hey, you all don't attack the building. They're extremely prepared for you all. And, they order this assault anyway. And they have like, I want to say a javelin missile or something wild. They just like obliterate the APC, and like they don't want to kill the cops, but they do wound them.
Well, they don't kill the cops that are on foot. They absolutely obliterate the guy in the APC.
Those people are dead as fuck, but like they're just like kind of owning them, and it's like just showing like, oh, they're not listening to the guy who's actually there, in person doing the work. They're using their bureaucratic playbook to try to handle this, and they're fucking it up.
Yeah, and to stop them, John ties some fucking C4 onto a computer monitor onto a chair and throws it down an elevator shaft.
So that was why I was like, what is happening here? Because I saw him tie some stuff to the computer, but like, I don't know anything about explosives. I would assume there needs to be some sort of detonation.
That was the whole thing, is he had the detonators that Hans needed.
Okay.
And so he used 4 of those detonators to send that bomb down there.
Got you. Okay, yeah, that's a cool scene though. I love that. It's just like it takes out the entire 10th floor or some shit. It's awesome.
It also takes him by surprise. He's like looking down the elevator shaft, going, "Oh shit!" And then the fire comes back up at him.
Yeah,
and he has to like dodge.
It's really good. This movie's budget was not that big. 25 to 35 million. And like, I don't know, on Twitter this week I've seen people talking about how like movie budgets are too big these days. And like that makes blockbusters prone who are would potentially like if you don't make like a huge amount of money, like it can really hurt a studio. It's like, again, I kind of agree with that. I don't know much about movie making, but I don't know. It seems like this film did all right without that many special effects.
Well, this is, to me, while I was watching this, I couldn't help but keep thinking about the fact that it's kind of the spiritual opposite of Fast and Furious, while staying within the same genre, right? Because Fast and Furious is all about the effects, and it's all about precision and the characters knowing exactly what's coming, and the characters being able to calculate something like, if I hook my car to this crane and swing around and use my charger as a bludgeon, like, it'll all work out, right? Like, there's no sense of like true danger, because you're just kind of there for the spectacle of it all. But there is like true danger here, and a lot of the quote unquote action is just tension, like really masterful tension building that takes place, and there's not actually that much fighting, proportionally speaking.
Right. Like in one of the sequences when he's climbing down the elevator shaft, there's a bit where like he has to like use the gun strap to like lower himself lower to like get into another like area, and like the whole time you're seeing like the gun and the strap like fray and tear and break, and it's just like I was like I know obviously he's gonna end up fine, but like even at this moment I was like he's probably gonna get hurt really bad, and like that's kind of I feel like why this movie does much tension a lot better than maybe like Fast does, right? Because like the thing about God love Vin Diesel, but like you said, like he is wearing a spotless wife beater the entire time. Like he's able to drive his car and get it like use it to like block big explosions, and he's able to throw himself at cranes, and like he never takes any like physical damage, whereas Bruce Willis is just getting wrecked this entire time, and it shows there is a cost.
Both movies ask the same fundamental question, which like most action films do, which is that the main character is probably going to succeed, you just don't know how. And the way that Fast and Furious answers it is like, how is he going to break physics to do this? What is the most ridiculous and expensive way we can get from point A to point B? While Die Hard makes you ask, okay, yeah, he's probably going to pull this off, but what is the consequence of him pulling it off? And how is that going to make it harder for him to continue? When his foot was bleeding, I was like, holy shit, dude.
I really like that. This is a complete digression, but like, I'm about to wrap up a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and like, we've got a big boss battle, here at the end, and
As you do.
Right, and I want my players to win, right? You never really want to end a campaign with a total party kill. That sucks. But like, so the tension is like, as you say, how are you going to get there, and how do you make that battle feel meaningful, even though their victory is predetermined? And I'm like, that's kind of an incredible way to answer that. It's like you have to make them pay in some way, and like obviously narrative consequences in tabletop games are very different than watching an actor get the shit beat out of him on screen. But I also don't think it's that different. I think that like if you make people feel like they're just getting worked, maybe lean into the descriptions a little bit. But anyway, that's a digression. This is the point where Ellis gets shot, right?
Oh yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, he was kind of a sleazy dude who was hitting on Holly despite her clear disinterest, and he's like, all right, let me negotiate with the terrorists. I'm a businessman. This is what I do. And like, this is actually genuinely like why like, this is my opinion, or not opinion, but like, this is what I think of when I think of business majors, right? This is just like, I cut deals. This is what I do. Hey, I've got something to little give and take. And like, at the end of the day, I don't know what you're doing here, buddy. Like, you're just saying shit, and then you got shot.
I love the like 80s businessman stereotype. Are you familiar with the movie Ghost?
I have heard of it, yes.
Oh, we should watch Ghost. There's a Ghost the musical. It did go on Broadway.
Very good.
And there is a song. So the conceit of Ghost is that the main character's sleazy business friend gets his ass killed because the guy who was supposed to take his wallets to get like a code to transfer like a shit ton of money, he ended up killing him. And so the ghost is trying to basically like help his girlfriend solve his own murder. And there is a song where the like businessman friend character has his like I love business song. And it's just so cartoonishly menacing. And, like, that is the exact vibe I get from Ellis. And maybe I'll put
Right.
the audio under this little bit, just for funsies. But like it's
Playing a numbers game. Every second the numbers change. This is what I live to feel. It's the beauty of the deal. This is the essence of high finance. So many steps when you do business. This is always such a rush, making millions with one touch.
it's such a specific stereotype that is still accurate today, I think.
I think it should be perpetuated.
I think we should bully more business majors.
Yes, 100%. Anyway, he gets shot. And like, there's this bit where Hans is like, okay, so that didn't work to draw him out. I'm gonna go and pretend to, you know, be a guy. This is where he does his Californian accent, and it is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. He's like, he's doing he's a Britishman, playing a German, trying to do a Californian accent, and it's the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life. And it's like, that's why.
Fuck are you doing up here? What were you looking for?
I managed to get out of there and, well, I was just trying to get up on the roof and see if I could signal for help, you know. It's just right here. Why don't you come in and help?
Forget the roof.
Come on.
I said forget the roof. They got people all over.
Where's the Academy Award for this performance?
Truly. And like, that's why I think that McClane figures this guy out immediately, and he's like, sure, you can have this gun with no bullets in it. And then when he comes and like tries to shoot him, he's like, well, obviously I'm not going to trust you, dude. And like, unfortunately, you know, Hans is able to steal the detonators because his thugs show up and, you know, chase John away to another part of the building. But like, really good scene. Just really the tension. Like, I knew that scene was coming. I knew that he had given him a gun with no bullets because I had like recently heard about it on a podcast. But like, I was just like, that's such a fun thing to do. There's like a bunch of like fun little weird action scenes that happen in here. That's like, this is silly but not implausible. So
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it. Like, I literally, all I've known about this movie is that Bruce Willis is in it, and that there is a debate as to whether or not it is a Christmas movie. And that's all I knew going in. That's it.
Right.
I was so diehard blind that I thought Nakatomi Plaza, I was confusing it with the thing from Cyberpunk.
To be fair, everything in Cyberpunk is either like something with a very stupid name or something with a Japanese name said menacingly. So
in my defense, I did
you're
think...
not wrong.
And there is a tall building in Cyberpunk that has a Japanese name from a corporation. Like, that is the conceit
Right.
there. So
So yeah, at this point, this is where the FBI takes over, right?
and they show up smarmy and in suits.
100%. Like, they're just like, all right, the federal government's taken over. We're going to do this thing. And like, what they do is they run the terrorist playbook, which Hans is counting on to break the seventh seal to get into this bank vault. They cut the power.
Naruto-esque fucking bank vault.
Yeah, that's very funny. And then this is where they play the Hallelujah music as the bank vault opens.
No, they play "Oh Come All Ye Faithful," joyful and
yes.
triumphant.
Okay, yes, no, it's very good.
I
like-
hooted and hollered. It was very funny.
It's very silly, and they're just like, woohoo, we got our bonds. And like, the whole time, Hans has been like trying to, you know, play them off as like ideologically motivated. Like, once the FBI people start like talking to them, he's like, I need you to release our comrades in these prisons and bring us helicopters. And then once he gets off the phone, he's like, I read about those you know, radicals on the news. It's just like very funny. And like, the FBI is just like, all right, we'll send them helicopters, but they're gonna be attack helicopters, and we're you know, we can live with 25% casualties. I was like, oh, good lord. Like, this is where I was like, this is an anti-government movie, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And so, you know, like, Hans starts getting everybody up on the rooftop, and this is where John discovers that they've lined the whole rooftop to fucking blow to get the helicopters and the hostages. And Bruce Willis, in his brown, nasty tank top, gets up on that fucking roof and starts shooting his semi-automatic to scare the hostages back under. And then the helicopter starts shooting at him.
And he has to tie himself to a fire hose and throw himself off the building, which is terrifying.
I can't even imagine being that cornered. I mean, you know how I feel about heights and planes.
Yeah. No.
I'll just take the bullet.
Yeah, no, it's like, no, I've died many, many hours ago at this point. But like, it is a very tense scene where like the like fire hose thing like comes loose after the explosion, and like he just barely is able to like swing into like a broken window, and like at this point, his feet have already been like cut up and he's been shot.
Shatters the broken window with his bleeding foot.
Yeah. He's just like screaming in agony the whole time. He has to like tear up his filthy tank top and use it to like bind his wounds. It's awful.
It's truly. Also, I want to give Holly her flowers real quick, because like while she's being hostaged, she is the one, because they kill her boss Joe in like the first couple of minutes, because he's like, I don't have the fucking vault code. I don't know what you want from me. So they kill him, and then Holly gets put in charge de facto, and she goes and approaches Hans, and he's like, who put you in charge? And she's like, you did, you idiot, by killing my boss, and now everyone is looking to me, and I don't like it as much as you don't. And Hans honestly is just like, respect. And so she asks for a sofa for the pregnant lady, and is like, also, we need to piss. And it's just really good. Like, she gets to be, like, in control of the situation. She's, like, cool as a cucumber the whole time. She rules.
Yeah, no, I love Holly in those moments. She's obviously, like, very competent, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's why she's the girl boss. Like, she's good at her job, and she's taking control of the situation, which is very cool.
In a fuchsia suit with an 80s perm, which is how women should be.
Amen. Yeah, so anyway, at this point, things are coming to a head, but basically that reporter that you mentioned, like, is like doing a broadcast.
Scumbag.
And like yeah, this dude, he like goes to their house, he threatens their housekeeper with deportation, and then he like puts their kids on TV, and like they have like a portable TV at the plaza, so Gruber like sees the kid's face and then like looks over at the like picture on Holly's desk, and then like sees Holly, and he's like, wait, you're John McClane's wife. So he takes her hostage, and like now John, he's got 2 bullets left in his gun, his machine gun is out of ammo. He's just like, all right, what I'm gonna fucking do? And he looks at like the tape that's like in the mail room that he's like entered. He's like, all right, here we go. And he like comes down to confront Gruber and like the one remaining dude, because like at this point, like even when the getaway guy has been like rammed by Argyle, who is just kind of like chilling in the basement the whole time, Argyle like finds him and beats him up, which is really funny.
He crashes the car into their escape car. Crashes the limo into their escape car. It rolls.
It kicks ass. And like, so he's like, all right, you've got my wife, you got me. He sets the gun down, his machine gun down, and he's like, all right. But then he's taped the pistol to his back, so he's able to do like there's some like cowboy imagery. So he does like a quick draw. He shoots Gruber, and then he shoots the one other guy, and like Carl, yeah. As Hans is falling, he like grabs onto the watch that Holly got, like as a present for being so good at her job. And there's like a moment where she, is about to be taken down with him and fall off the edge of the building, but she undoes the clasp of the watch. Hans falls to his death, and John McClane and Holly McClane are reunited, and they're saved, and it's a happy ending. Until the one German guy whose brother he killed a long time ago shows up, and then Al shoots that guy.
Al shoots that guy. Also, John and Al have this, like, I mean, like, the reunion between Holly and John was pretty sweet. Like, they kissed, and the whole time I was sitting there thinking, can somebody take this man to a hospital? You can make out later. He needs to go. He is bleeding. He is dirty.
So wet.
Risking just sepsis and all sorts of infection. Like, please get this man home. But he goes outside, and then he gets this, like, beautiful, emotional first meeting with Al face-to-face. It's, like, big sweeping orchestration, slow, like... I was like, what is this? What is this directorial choice?
Like, I think, Holly and John have decent chemistry, but, like, the chemistry between Al and John, off the charts.
Off the charts.
This is the true romantic climax of the movie. Yeah, anyway, it is wild that they interrupt this whole, like, touching scene with the one last German coming in, threatening to shoot everyone, and then, like, Al just shoots him. Just a wild way to like, throw one last twist in. Like, not sure that was entirely necessary, but whatever, sure.
Sure.
Ties up Al's loose end about shooting a kid. Whatever, sure. And then, Argyle, who is still there, takes Holly and John home, and they make out.
Yeah.
It's great.
What a beautiful ending. Wish they'd take him to a fucking hospital.
He needs to go to the hospital so bad. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like we covered a lot of the main points, but, I think the main thing that, I feel about this movie is just it does feel like a lot of the craft of filmmaking, even big stupid action movies like this, has been lost in the last, 30, 40 years. So much of this would have been supplemented with CGI at this point, and that's a darn shame, I think.
It is. Bitches love... there's a world in which, my favorite thing is using CGI to, supplement practicals, but going with, a practicals first approach. And this just ruled. This was great. I do wish that, I don't know, we'd do more of this kind of, tension building and story craft around action flicks, and... I don't know, maybe something will surprise us that comes out soon. Yeah, one day. Just there's a lot of if you look up the stunts of this movie, did so many of these stunts are really real stunts that they did in an interesting way. There's big falls and explosions and fun stuff like that. But I wish one day we'll get back. And we
there.
did make the note that this movie is incredibly horny because again, Bruce Willis keeps losing things and getting wetter. There's also just random excuses to show tits. Weirdly, not even in a derogatory way, just in kind of a fun, hey, look a boob way. There's a lady who goes to have sex with her coworker and then ends up running out naked. It didn't feel exploitative. It just kind of felt silly.
Right, no.
And then John does pass by a poster, a porn poster, in one of the shafts or whatever, and he just he covers up their breasts with his hand and he goes, girls, and it just moves on.
Very funny. It's a fun horniness that we've talked a lot about how generally there's a lot, bigger productions are just not that horny anymore, which is a shame. But yeah, again, just lamenting the things that were sometimes better in the old days. But now, the most important question I think we have to answer, is this a Christmas movie?
I think it is.
Why do you think it is?
So, honestly, if it was... Because, it just takes place at Christmas and it's only mentioned a couple times in the beginning. I think what really sealed it for me was that it ends with a Christmas carol, and also the climactic vault opening moment happens to O Come O Ye Faithful.
And listen, that's pretty good, but I don't know. I feel like there's, there are a couple too many horrible deaths that maybe a Christmas movie does not perhaps need to have.
Maybe that's what Christmas is to you,
I guess so. I guess it depends on what the meaning of Christmas is.
Christmas to me is, I think my go-to Christmas movies are the Princess Switch movies, so...
Right. Those are, A tier.
A tier. But...
S tier.
I would not... If somebody wanted to watch Die Hard at Christmas, I would not say no.
Yeah, yes, this is something where it's if I wanted to mix it up at Christmas, getting tired of Rudolph, you know what? Fuck it. Sure.
Fuck it. Die Hard.
Leyla, for our Mortified Marketing Minute.
Great.
If we were going to make a big, stupid action movie, what do you think we would make, and how would we kind of center it? I feel like this movie is pretty centered in, one, John's relationship with his wife, and two, his relationship with Al. I feel like that gives it a pretty solid emotional core. What kind of action movie would you like to do, and how would we kind of ground it to make it relatable to audiences?
I think I want two tween girls. I want to anchor it in their friendship. Okay. And I just want them to do 6 stunts and clown on some villains. I don't know what the villains would even be. But I'm talking little girls versus grown men in suit. That's what I want to see, a magical girl level of these 2 girls are besties and they're going to face the world together. And they're fighting a bunch of grown men in suits. Why? I don't know yet. Maybe you know what? Maybe they're at the Kentucky Derby. Maybe they're horse girls because horse girls are incredibly powerful. And the
That's
Kentucky
true.
Derby gets like taken over because there's a lot of money circulating there. And they have to like free, with the power of horses, the audience.
Interesting.
I would watch the shit out of this. Hey, Universal, let's talk.
When you say little girls fighting grown men, it makes me think of like, okay, that's kind of like Home Alone. So we could
Slightly
do like
older.
a little bit older. So let's say, 12 years old, right?
12 to 14, yeah.
Okay, 14. Holding down the fort in the Kentucky Derby.
We're talking big hats. We're talking
right.
horses. We're talking stunts that have to do with like the levels of a stadium, which I think there's a lot of utility there.
I think we could definitely, right? Like, I think there's definitely a way to get the horses involved, and like, I'm not sure what exactly horse sports there are, but I bet we could do some horse archery, some, jumping over people and having the horse, crash into them, throwing various poles, whacking people, doing horse drive-bys, etc. I think that's definitely plausible. And I think that, I think the bond that two girls have with each other and their horses is something that, all, not just America, but humanity can relate to.
I would agree.
Leyla, when we're not pitching the best movies this universe has ever seen, where can we be found on the internet?
The movie's title would have to be Dirty Derby. Anyway,
Great.
you can find me at AllieYLSES on Twitter, and Tumblr. I'm just kind of working. I am plotting and scheming and plotting and thinking of. So I turned 30 this year, which is pretty cool. I'm kind of excited. Plotting a wee bit of an essay that is a retrospective of my 20s.
Ooh.
I don't know. I like doing corny shit like that. So maybe watch out for that in the next 3 or 4 months. I'm
that'll be
trying to plan
exciting.
it out like far ahead enough of time, because sometimes when I write things like this, my first drafts are just like cringe as shit. So I'm trying to get it in a place that I like.
Very good. Cannot wait to see how that turns out. You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, on Tumblr at Monster Factory Fanfic, and on YouTube at AA Voigt. I talk about tabletop RPGs, health policy, and writing. I do another podcast with my friends Michael and Josh. That's at Bible Boys on Twitter, but like the Bible Boys. If you search that on podcasts, you'll find us. Talk about Christian media. We are going to at some point watch But I'm a Cheerleader. So again, an interesting dose of what it was like to live several decades ago, and it's something.
I love that movie. I can't wait to listen to that.
It'll be fun. It's a good time. But yeah, our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, how do you think we should close out this podcast?
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Amen. We'll see you all next week.